Hi, Catherine. Okay, so let's get started with the joining. Okay, this is the last motif that I did. And you see I've joined here. It's my joining round. So think of that as the beginning of your round for your edging. Always starts with a white. Now for your first one, you should have gone all the way around and join with a slip stitch back here. Your marker always, no matter what motif you're sewing on, always goes onto the chain 3 space between the first red and your second white. So between your first side and your second side, because remember these two wedges count as one side, right? And this is where you start. So this is my first side, this is my second side. Your marker always goes into the chain 3 space between the red and the white when you're making your motifs. Now on your first motif, I'm not sure if you placed a marker or not. I believe she does instruct you to do that. But if you haven't, do it now. Just pick any space between the red and white, chain 3 space, and put your marker. So when you've done your motif, you're going to join, you're going to do it all the way around, save these two for your first join. Your yarn's going to be coming over here, like mine is right now over here. You're going to have these two undone, and this is where you're going to start your join. And you're only going to join these two. The caveat I put, I guess it's not really a caveat, but something to keep in mind, I guess, while you're joining. This white and red will always join up to a red and a white on the other side. Let me show you. You see here, the white ends up joining to a red, and the red joins to a white. That's on all the motifs. So let's just see how this goes. I left some yarn here. This is something you can do subsequently. If you want to count ahead, because you can kind of figure out how many two-sided joins and how many three-sided joins you need. You can just allow yourself probably about, for the two-sided joins, after you do the edging minus the wedges you're going to join. The two-sided, you probably need about 2 yards, and three-sided join 3 yards. And you can do the motifs without joining them all as you go if you want to make the project a little bit more portable. Okay, so I've joined my motif over here. Oops, over here. I've done 6 chain 3 spaces. It's where I transition between my first pair and my second pair. And I put my marker. And I continued around because I'm doing a 3-sided join next. So for 3-sided join, I left open 6 wedges, which are 3 sides. Now don't worry about this curling, it'll curl. I have a pretty comfortable tension, a pretty relaxed tension anyway. I'm using a size 5mm hook, with worsted acrylic. This is Vanna's yarn, Vanna's Choice. The other one I used Impeccable by Loops and Threads at Michael's. That's my favorite. This one not so much, but it was on sale. So, yeah, so I left 6 wedges open. So all I've done is I've slip stitched into that first single crochet row, and I've chained 1. So that's where I'm going to join right now. Sorry, it's a little fiddly with the camera. I have the camera with this weird setup, so I can use both of my hands. I'm going to look for my marker on my Afghan, which is here. See, it's between a red and a white. Here, actually, I'm using cranberry and cream, which I really like. The first one I did cherry red and white, real white. So, for this chain 3 space, like I told you last night, I actually went into the chain. I didn't go around. To me, it's neater. And your diamond's going to end up being neater. And your positioning is going to be end up neater. Your Afghan's going to be neater. When you block this, everything will be really done well and everything will line up. So that's why I did it this way. It takes a little extra time, but not much. So what I do is I go behind, oh, let me get focus. There's my chain 3 space. I go behind that back spine. I grab that back spine and then I spin my hook around. And so now you see that I've gone over under those top 2 V's. This is the chain 3 space that's marked. And then I'm going to slip through that, tighten up a little bit, and I'm going to slip through that space, and then you chain 1. So essentially you're creating a chain 3, but you're doing it with a chain 1, slip stitch, and another chain 1. So when you go to slip stitch, that's 3 stitches. And what I did was it's kind of confusing because she shows you the diagram and it doesn't exactly look like the diagram. She shows 4 spines, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are actually 5. This one doesn't, the first one here doesn't really count because it actually counts as your top joining row, but when you see single crochet for your next row, it kind of pushes it out and makes it look like a spine. So what I did was I slip stitched into this 3rd one. So I count at 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, I slip stitch into that 3rd one, tighten up a little bit, pull that slip stitch through. Then you chain 1. Then you go to your next chain 3 space, right next to the one that you just did. That's the one I just did, and I'm going to the next one. Again, I go under that little spine. So on the right side, I'm underneath the V. I slip stitch, tighten up a little bit, and I slip stitch through. Don't make this too tight. You want it nice, even tension. Don't do it too tight, because if you do, your V's aren't gonna spread out when it's blocked. Just so it's snug, you know. Don't go all Ike Turner on it and yank it. So then I chain 1. Then I slip stitch back into my motif, that last spine, and that last stitch. It's only 1 loop. It's going to feel awkward because it's only 1. It might stretch out a little bit, but as soon as this stretches out, it goes back down, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to slip stitch into that, slip stitch, chain 1, and then we go into the next chain 3 space. So here, chain 3 space I've just slip stitched into. Now I'm going into this next one. Go under the rib. I'm in correct position now. Slip my yarn through, snug it up, not too tight, pull through my slip stitch, and I chain 1. Don't ever forget that chain 1. So we've joined half of our side, 1 wedge. So then we slip stitch into, now this time we go into this bar, which is on the side of the single crochet row. There's a bar that faces you. That's the one I picked up into. Sometimes if I go underneath it with my hook, I can grab it. Pull the yarn, slip stitch, chain 1. Then I go back to my motif. You can see where I joined the last time. I'm going to go to the chain 3 right next to it. Go under the rib. Slip stitch. Getting slack out. And then pull through, chain 1. Then I go back to my motif. I'm going to skip 2. 1, 2. I'm going to go into the 3rd one. Slip stitch into that. Chain 1. Then I go back to my motif. Go to the next chain 3 space. Slip stitch through. Chain 1. Then I go to that last spine. slip stitch, chain 1. Now I've completely done one side. How can I tell? If I go this, oh, I have one more, I'm sorry. I missed the slip stitch. Back to the motif. Go back to the motif, slip stitch in your last chain 3 space before the join. Chain 1, and you're going back to your beginning position. And by beginning position, I mean we're going to the side of that single crochet row and slip stitching. Chain 1, and that's where we started, back over here. So one side has been joined, and you can tell because you have 5 diamonds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, when you go to your next side, be careful, because if you look, this is where my last diamond was, and you have 2 sides, 2 offshoots. Those don't count, so you just don't ignore those. Once you hit this beginning spot, the beginning position of the slip stitch onto the first single crochet row, then you know that you're ready to go to your next motif. So I go to my first chain 3 space that's available on my motif. It's not this one because it's connected to that diamond. It's the next one. See that? Don't go into this. And you don't have enough chains anyway. You're going to go into the first whole chain 3. And I'm going to slip stitch into that. Slip stitch and chain 1. And then I go back to my motif and do it. So you're going to go back and forth, back and forth. Always check after each side that you have 5. Okay? And that's it. And you just repeat around. So that'll do it. 2-sided looks the same, except you're just only doing 2 sides. You can recognize when you lay your Afghan flat which one you're doing. And then you just mark it off on your chart. I've done that one, so I can, and if you ever get lost, just count how many motifs you have that you've done compared to your chart. And that way you know where you're at, so you never get lost. Now, once I'm finished joining this motif, I come back at the beginning where that stitch marker was, I remove it. And that'll be my stitch marker for my new motif that I'm going to create after I finish joining this one. This one already has a stitch marker that I placed when I was making it, and that's how I know where I'm going to join the next one. So I can put this down, pick it up. I know all I have to look for is that stitch marker. And this one's on my new motif, so I just keep, swapping those out one by one. And I think that's it. I hope that answers your questions. All right. Be patient. The first time it took me, I had to redo a couple of joins. And like I said, the patterns are really wordy, and I write patterns. I've designed for crochet and knitting, and I still had to read it several times and made a few mistakes. So just be patient with yourself. And after you get it, it's a lot of fun. This is my second one in a row that I'm making, and I'm enjoying it. So have a good night. Thanks. Bye.